At some point in your life, you have experienced a conflict. Whether that conflict was with your brother or sister, your parent or guardian, your friend, romantic partner, or even a coworker. Your attitudes and that other person's attitudes about conflict probably shaped how you even perceive conflict still today. In this video, we're going to discuss what is a conflict and why do we get into these conflicts in the first place? What's the difference between a destructive conflict and a constructive conflict? And then we'll cover 5 different conflict management styles. And you can kind of start seeing how you approach conflict from those styles. So first things first, what is conflict? If you were going to define conflict, it is an expressed struggle between at least 2 interdependent parties who have a perception of incompatible goals, scarce resources, and interference from the other party in achieving their goals. So let's break that down. What does that really mean? First, express struggle. So yes, there are times you could have inner conflict within yourself, or there could be times where you and your friend or your partner or any other person that you have an interpersonal relationship with may be on different ends of a certain topic. But if that struggle is expressed, now we are getting into the conflict arena. Keep in mind that interpersonal conflict is between at least 2 interdependent parties. So if that person has no effect on you whatsoever, it's probably likely that you won't feel any conflict from that person. You may just think, oh, well, we disagree, and I can keep living my life the way I live my life. Whereas if it's somebody you see every single day and you have a relationship with, a disagreement between 2 interdependent parties can be something to deal with. And then there's a perception of incompatible goals, scarce resources, and interference. Keep in mind that the key word here is perception. Sometimes, if you just think about it differently, your incompatible goals or even scarce resources aren't really that different. Maybe you have the same goals, or maybe there's a plentiful amount of resources right there in front of you. Or maybe you just perceive that they're trying to interfere with you getting what you want out of life, because their views are a little bit different. Keep in mind, those incompatible goals, that's one of the major reasons why we get into conflict in the first place. I've had friends who said, okay, I am perfectly fine with every aspect of our relationship except this one little issue. They want to move off to a big city, and I would rather stay in a small town. Immediately, they have incompatible goals. They think that there's no way that they can both get what they want and be happy. Sometimes the reason for conflict is faulty communication. If you study communication enough, you know that miscommunication happens in an instant. It doesn't take much for someone to misunderstand what someone's trying to say. And at times, especially when emotions run high, faulty communication can be the culprit. It could just be a simple misunderstanding. It could even be a faulty attribution. Maybe you think that that person not taking out the trash is in some way trying to sabotage you. This person always wants me to do all the work around the house. They don't really even care about me. They've never cared about me. See that link? You went from the person doesn't take out the trash to they always try to make me do all the work to this person doesn't care about me. That would be a faulty attribution. It could be they just forgot to take out the trash that day. Or maybe they don't even see the trash as that full. Usually our faulty attributions are connected to faulty perception. Remember that every single person sees the world just a little bit differently. You see it from your own eyes. You see it from your own perspective. So when other people disagree with you, it can be difficult to understand their perception, how they perceive the world. And at times it's just a personality conflict. Not everybody's going to get along. Some people just can't click. Now that we know some of the reasons, let's look at some destructive and constructive conflict. When a relationship is having a destructive conflict, There's a winner and a loser. I think most people think conflict has to have a winner and a loser, but that's not always the case. Usually when there's a winner and a loser, someone has hurt feelings. In destructive conflict, the person gets attacked, not always the problem. So it could have started out with that trash can, but now you start attacking that person's character. You're a slob. You never take care of anything around the house. You don't care about yourself. Now, instead of attacking the problem, which is the trash can overflowing, you're attacking the person's character. And what happens when you attack a person? They become defensive. And lastly to note, a destructive conflict will change who we are into someone we dislike. You may find yourself getting angry at times when you know you have been able to handle your emotions a lot simpler. You may find out that you are cheating or lying to that person, going behind their back. At this point, you know the conflict is not healthy. It's purely destructive. But just because some conflicts are destructive doesn't mean that all conflicts are that way. Constructive conflicts really help you resolve your problems. Sometimes seeing two different ways of a particular topic can help you realize we're different. But let's go ahead and figure out what we both want out of this. Let's start to clarify our goals. Do I really want to live in a big city and you just really want to live in a small town? What do we want in common? Maybe we just want a place where we can both feel at home. A constructive conflict will lead to problem solving, which is a good step for any couple, any family, any work relationship. Once you learn how you guys solve problems, you can keep using that to solve future problems. Additionally, a constructive conflict will help you see the other person's viewpoint a lot better. And because you've gone through all these different ideas of problem solving and understanding the other person's viewpoint, it's going to strengthen your relationship as a whole. You never know how strong your relationship is if you never experience any trouble in that relationship. So while some conflicts can be healthy, we also need to think about how do we even approach conflicts to begin with. You'll probably start to see yourself in one of these conflict management styles, whether it be through withdrawing, accommodating, forcing, negotiating, or collaborating. If you are a withdrawer in conflict, you like to avoid conflict at all costs. Keep in mind that while you may physically or even emotionally try to avoid this conflict, the conflict is only temporarily avoided. Because you're not facing the issues head on, there's going to feel like there's no resolution. The emotions tend to just fester and fester, and no one actually gets their problem solved. The number one benefit is that this does give you time to calm down. I know many people who say, I'm angry right now, I need to walk away. That periodic withdrawing helps them calm down, helps them get their ideas together so they don't say something that they regret. However, if you always withdraw, that can be detrimental too. There can be cumulative annoyance and hostility that builds up. Withdrawers are typically the people who blow up out of nowhere. Everything is fine, and then one day, boom. They're angry, they're yelling, they're screaming, they're throwing things, and everybody around them does not understand. But because they've been letting bit by bit by bit by bit by bit by bit build up, they explode. Some people are accommodators. If you're an accommodator, then you go along with other people's needs and wants. Now, there can be benefits to being accommodating at times. Especially when the issue is unimportant, you get a quick resolution. If one friend says, I want to go to McDonald's, another friend says, I want to go to Burger King, the accommodator says, well, I don't really care where we go, I'm hungry, so you pick. Yes, they are going along with the other person's wants at that moment, but the issue is not that important to them. Now, accommodating can be detrimental, especially if you accommodate when there's big issues, because you're going to feel eventually like you're denying your own needs. You don't ever get what you want out of the relationship. And this can lead to some cumulative annoyance. So accommodators can also be people who tend to blow up out of nowhere, where the partner thought, "You always just go along with what I say. Why are you so angry?" Well, they feel like they were denying their needs this entire time. Then there are forcers. These are the people who compete. They use their power over the other person to get their way. In general, the forcer is the person who wants to win the conflict. Now, forcing can have some benefits. In an emergency, you get a really quick resolution. If someone is arguing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then someone just says, "Hey, we are doing this. No questions, no comments, we're doing it." You get a quick resolution, especially in an emergency situation where someone needs to act very quickly. You don't really have time to negotiate and discuss what's going to be best for both parties. But forcing can be detrimental, especially if you always try to win the conflict, because it can build aggression. Forcers may tend to think that they have the right to always win the conflict. And even resentment can form to some degree, whether it be the forcer being a little upset with the accommodator or the withdrawer because that person always lets them win, or even if it's the partner who is resenting the forcer because you made me buy you a $100 purse when I didn't want to buy you a $100 purse. Then there's negotiating. This is what we typically think of as the compromise. Keep in mind that compromising involves a give and take. It may be a 50-50, it may be a 75-25, but to some degree, both parties are having to give a little to get a little. The benefit here is that negotiating is sometimes the best option and the only good option that you have. But it can also be detrimental because the quality of a resolution might be reduced. If you approach every single conflict in the way of, this person has to give me something and get part of what they want taken away for me to give something to them back, but that also means I have to take something away from what I want, you may start to think, well, what's the point of even negotiating? Is there a better way? Collaborating. This may be your answer. Collaborating is mutually working to create a solution that meets all needs and all wants. This is a win-win for both parties. So it's 100% to 100%. The benefit here is that everyone feels heard and respected. The detriment is that it takes a lot of time to collaborate because you have to make sure that you hear both parties out, that both people are putting their feelings completely on the table and saying what they want. Because collaborating is usually really new of an idea, I always explain the steps. First, you want to identify the problem. Make sure that you attack the problem and not the people. So, is it really that that person annoys you so much? Or is it that the trash can is not being taken out? Remember to be open and honest. Only when you're open and honest can you really reach 100% of your goals being met, because the other party won't know if you don't tell them. This is going to involve listening. Both people have to listen to the other person's wants and needs and respond empathically. Make sure that they know that you're listening to them, that you're really trying to understand their perspective. Focus on common interests and long-term goals. So if Party A wants to move to the big city and Party B wants to stay in a very small town, what's common there? What are the long-term goals? Maybe both parties want to have the ability to go 5 minutes and eat sushi, but they also want to know their neighbors and make friends with their neighbors. Well, what would be the best of both worlds here? How can both people get their long-term goals met? Then you start to create some common ground options before arriving at decisions. So for our party above, maybe it's a suburb. Maybe that's the best answer. So now you have a better idea of what conflict is, why we get in conflicts in the first place, how they can be destructive and constructive, and you may even start seeing your own conflict management style.